President Trump weighed in on social media following that horrific attack in Boulder, saying that these kind of attacks will not be tolerated in the United States, but also using the moment to go after his predecessor, blaming President Biden for allowing the suspect here to come into the United States. Now, the suspect is an Egyptian national. He did actually come into the United States legally on a tourist visa, but according to the Department of Homeland Security, after that visa expired, he stayed in the United States illegally, only later applying for asylum. That isn't something that the president and his Department of Homeland Security spokesperson has been highlighting on social media following that attack, with Trump once again using his predecessor's record on immigration to try to go after him. Back here in the newsroom tonight, my White House insiders are joining me. CNN's Priscilla Alvarez, Reuters' Jeff Mason, and Sabrina Singh, who is the former Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary. And Priscilla, obviously this has been something that we have seen the White House focusing on ever since the identity of this suspect was revealed yesterday. What else are you hearing from people at the Department of Homeland Security about his status, how long he was in the country, and what we know about his time here?
Yeah, there are really two key points that his immigration history boils down to. The first is how he got here. That was through the B2 visa, which could be used for tourism, and that was in August of 2022. Now, when you come on that visa, you can only stay for 6 months. That's generally the limit. And we learned from the Department of Homeland Security that he had later applied for asylum. Over the course of his time with his pending asylum application, he also got a work permit. That is very typical. That work permit, however, expired in March of this year. So if you look at his entire immigration history, he was actually in the United States longer legally than he was illegally. We don't know, however, what his application is right now. I have asked the Department of Homeland Security that. Is it still pending, for example? Has it already been denied given the circumstances of today? That is something we're still waiting to get an answer to, but we do know that as of March of this year, he no longer had papers to be in the United States. Therefore, he was in the U.S. illegally.
How common is that? How many people, I mean, I think we focus, and you do with your reporting, understandably, on the border and what's happening there, people who cross illegally. How many people generally are in the United States that do overstay a visa? I imagine a lot.
A lot, and this has really put a spotlight on the various overstayers that are here in the United States. According to a think tank, 40% of the undocumented population in the United States are actually people who have come here on a visa, they've entered the United States illegally, then overstayed that visa because there are limits as to how long you can be in the United States on each of these. I will tell you, however, that what he did, coming on a visa, then applying for asylum, that's actually quite common. There are people who come from all over the world on visas and then apply for asylum here. So the occurrence here was pretty standard with what we've seen with other visa overstayers.
You worked under President Biden in several different roles in his administration. What is your response when you hear President Trump and people in his White House criticizing Biden and saying, you know, this happened on his watch?
Well, I think what Priscilla points out is that, you know, this individual came here legally. Yes, it was under the previous administration, but his status and, you know, his illegal status, you know, it expired in March 2025 of this year. I think there's a lot of conversations that should be had of people overstaying their visas. And at the end of the day, these people should follow the law. You know, under the previous administration, under the one that I served, immigration, you know, border crossings were going down. But of course, we've seen this president use it as a talking point and something that he certainly ran his election on, that they're going to keep pushing this message. And so it's not a surprise that we're seeing Donald Trump coming out swinging so hard on this. But again, I mean, taking the politics out of it, you have 12 people that were injured horrifically in an attack like this. We should really see the rhetoric on this violence come down and hopefully have more security at events like this so people can peacefully, whether it's organized protest, whatever it is, do so in a peaceful manner, but with, you know, a security apparatus around them as well.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously certainly not how the Trump White House sees it, as you know very well, Jeff. I mean, they have said this is why Trump won, in part, that this was part of what helped him get into the White House. What are you hearing from people at the White House tonight in terms of, we've seen what the administration has been doing on going after and tamping down border crossings and bringing them down to low levels, but what about the people who have overstayed visas? Is that going to become a new target for them?
Well, I think in general, this just solidifies their view that they're doing the right thing with regard to immigration broadly and with regard to a crackdown on the border, with regard to this latest issue that you're raising too about overstayers. You know, very important to say awful what happened. It's unacceptable. But that aside, this White House is not going to jettison the politics. They're going to use this as an opportunity to say, to blame his predecessor, blame President Biden, and focus on what they're doing, because it's been a winning issue for President Trump as a candidate and as somebody who's serving as commander-in-chief.
Yeah, and different visas, tourist visas, obviously last at different periods.
Right.
Do we know how long an Egyptian visa tourist visa would last for an Egyptian national?
A B2 visa for this would be, again, about 6 months, and he would have had to, but what's interesting here is he applied for asylum during that period. So this is really the state of our immigration system, is it gets very patchy very quickly. You can come on one visa, then apply for something else, fall out of status here, but still have this other paper over there. And this is where it gets so complicated. And this is why White House border czar Tom Homan has repeatedly said he plans to widen the aperture of the people that they are arresting in this country.
Yeah, great to have you all here. Thank you for that reporting.
This weekend's assault is just the latest in an alarming rise of anti-Semitic incidents across the United States. According to the Anti-Nation League, there were more than 9,000 last year. In 2014, there were fewer than 1,000. That is a tenfold increase in the last 10 years. There's no question that if we were seeing what we've seen over the last several months, for Josh Shapiro's house being firebombed, you have this incident, another in which 2 individuals who worked at the Jewish embassy were shot basically at point blank. This would be considered a 5-alarm fire of a problem that we have in this country, Bill. I mean, do you think that there is a willingness to acknowledge at this point something is happening here and it needs to be stopped before it becomes a bigger issue?
I think there's a willingness to acknowledge it. I don't know if there's a willingness to do, or to try to do, it's not so easy, obviously, to try to do what you might do to really stop it. I mean, are you going to really put serious law enforcement, people on this case? The Trump administration is busy deporting 5-year-olds and 18-year-olds and people who've lived here peacefully for 40 years. Maybe they should take some of those resources from DHS and the FBI and get them back to fighting domestic terrorism, which incidentally was a focus for the last few years and may have had some success. So I hope we take it very seriously, yes. But I think it's important to take it seriously practically, And we have to deal with the anti-Semitism. That has been around for a long time. It's a very complicated thing to deal with as a sort of sociological or intellectual thing. But there's a lot law enforcement can do to make this less, not to make it impossible, to make it less likely to happen.
Let me just play what Senator John Fetterman, a Democrat from Pennsylvania, said about this. Listen.
This is just rampant across all the universities, for all these places too. I mean, we really need to call it what it is. And for me, politically, being very, very firmly side on Israel, that kind of put parts of my party at odds for that. And I just want to continue. And I think we need to deliver a legislative solution too and really address anti-Semitism and just call it what it is.
Is he right, Congressman, that this is an outgrowth of what's happening on universities and on college campuses?
Well, first, we have to acknowledge that there is a crisis of anti-Semitism. Jewish Americans are feeling unsafe. I agree with Bill that we need more law enforcement, but we also need people in my party clearly, unequivocally condemning anti-Semitism, condemning things like globalize the Intifada or River to the Sea chants. So to the extent that there are irresponsible words out there and people aren't condemning them and saying that that's hate, then that is contributory. But what we don't want to do, in my view, is to stifle speech. And so we need to condemn unequivocally hate speech, but allow for the free expression at universities.
But Abby, if I could jump in, the problem is not enough Democrats did that last year when these college protests were rampant. They made the excuse that it was all free speech. They made the excuse that people had the freedom to assemble under the First Amendment. When many Americans, many Republicans, and even some Jewish Americans, Jewish students were saying this is going to lead to violence. Well, the chickens have come home to roost. And while there are some Democrats, congressmen, who have indeed come out against anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist rhetoric, there are a whole lot who have not said a single word, in part because they were so interested in wanting to make sure that they had those votes last year, which it didn't pan out for them.
Come on.
To get
Do you think any of these, the shooter in Boulder or the shooter in Washington, were influenced by what Democratic members of Congress said?
So you think the college
Do you think they were influenced by Harvard?
Meant nothing?
I think they were bad, and I actually was somewhat involved in trying to get Harvard to be tougher on them. They were bad for Harvard. They were bad for the general
Harvard,
atmosphere.
Bill.
You think those people? That guy in Boulder was paying careful attention. Was paying careful attention.
The entire
Social media does a lot more trouble.
Social media. Agree with that? Would you not agree that we have a problem with anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic rhetoric on college campuses across the country?
We have had a problem. It's much less today than it was a year and a half ago. I know many people who graduated from college in the last week or two who had good experience. I know some Jewish students who were harassed occasionally and whose life was made uncomfortable, which should not happen. I think there were administrations that were too weak. I agree with that. But I think that's a long way ago from some people taking guns and shooting people point blank.
Yeah, I agree. Here's what we also have to acknowledge. And I agree that a lot of the college students and the colleges and the leaders did not deal with this as they should have. But we also have to acknowledge, Abby, that the rise of anti-Semitism in the last decade can be correlated with the rise of Donald Trump. And the kind of language that he gives a permission slip for all of this anti-Semitic language to be used, in a way that we really hadn't seen before. The President of the United States, when you have dinner with a neo-Nazi, when you pardon people who are the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, whose groups have an ideology that supports anti-Semitism, when you have anti-Semitic tropes that you traffic in and that you amplify on your own social media, where you have followers of millions of people, you cannot give a pass to the President of the United States with the kind of megaphone that he has and say, oh, he has absolutely nothing to do with this.
That is absolutely nuts. You guys are barely scratching the surface here. This isn't just about we need more Democrats to condemn what's happening. How about let's get Democrats not joining in on it? How about AOC and Representative Omar don't join those college campuses? And this hasn't been going on for 10 years. It's been going on for 18 months. And it starts on the college campuses. It empowers people to go beyond. And it has nothing to do with Donald Trump.
I want to be a little bit more specific about what we're talking about here, because I definitely think, to the Congressman's point, there are specific things that are being said on these campuses that are anti-Semitic. But the idea that AOC and, I don't know, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar are engaging in those activities, I'm not sure
there's a lot of evidence.
They
spoke at the campuses.
You know what I mean?
They were there on those campuses.
Right, but I guess, but here's what I'm saying. But do you understand what I'm saying? If they show up on college campuses to protest, what's the situation in Gaza, are you saying automatically the same thing as uttering anti-Semitic words?
Yes, they're anti-Semitic. Make no mistake about it. Their words are absolutely, and this is all based in anti-Semitism.
Right, what I'm saying is, do you have evidence that they actually engaged in anti-Semitic language? That is the issue.
You know what I mean about supporting terrorists and
some of her past
statements? Are you saying? Do we have to go through the statements?
I am talking about on college campuses. Because I think that there is a difference.
The history of
protesting
is very clear.
There's a difference between protesting and saying and doing anti-Semitic things. Would you not agree?
Ilhan Omar's rhetoric, as it pertains to Jewish people in the state of Israel, is deplorable and disgusting. She shouldn't even be in Congress, in my opinion. And them showing up on those college campuses is a green light for the most vicious, disgusting, despicable rhetoric against Jewish students and against Jewish people. You can absolutely draw a correlation. And to pretend that they were on the college campuses and saying kumbaya is to just be naive.
The governor and I were talking about President Bush Sr. Before we got on the set, and the tone he set for this country. You know what I think is sad? The Democrats are saying, oh, it's Trump's fault, the anti-Semitism. The Republicans are saying it's the Democrats' fault. How about we just have leadership in this country that starts to bring this country together to condemn anti-Semitism, condemn the terrorism, stop blaming each other? And that's the type of leadership we had, whether it was Reagan, whether it was President Bush Sr., whether it was President Obama. We need to get back to that. But wouldn't you agree
we need a cultural change? Students and kids under the age of 30 years old, this is prevalent. This is commonplace. Even the kids that aren't showing up on those campuses think that there's a massive problem with Israel and we should all support Hamas and Gaza. These are the same people that say, well, it's about the women and children that are being killed, yet did nothing about the 300,000 people that were murdered in Darfur or the 500,000 in Ethiopia. They're picking and choosing their self-righteous.
You don't think it has anything to do with Donald Trump's anti-Semitic rhetoric and the tropes that he actually puts out there?
But Maria, I do think we have to take the point that he's making, which is that in the last 18 months, since October 7th, the rise in anti-Semitism is clear. That is not a Donald Trump thing. That is a clear outgrowth of this particular moment that we are in. And Trump has his problems, but I do think you have to acknowledge that there is something going on here maybe a permission structure that needs to be addressed or should have been addressed 18 months ago.
I mentioned that when I acknowledged that a lot of what was going on the college campuses, the leaders of those college campuses, which frankly paid the price for it, did not handle it very well. But we have to go back. I feel like everyone is giving Donald Trump, letting him off the hook for the kind of language that he permits. When you have an administration like his, where you have officials within the administration that have a history of anti-Semitic actions and words and associations, you can't take that out of the equation in terms of where we are now. And this didn't just happen after October 7th.
A problem that started 18 months ago.
Well, no one was killed in Pittsburgh. No one was killed. No one was killed in Pittsburgh. No one was killed in. No one was killed. Sure, Michael. No one was killed in Pittsburgh. No one was killed in Pittsburgh in 2018. Is that what you're saying? It only started.
I was just going to
How many people were killed in Pittsburgh?
Bill,
What were the motivations of that guy?
When did we see an increase in campus protests?
How many people were killed? How many people were killed?
18 months ago. Bill and Chair Michael, give me 1 second.
And you can be against Ilhan Omar. I happily against them both.
Absolutely.
And I think most Democrats are against them both.
Chair Michael,
and some Republicans are
I do
against
think
them
it is a
both.
fair point that it would be actually a disservice to Jewish Americans to pretend as if anti-Semitism only began
that's not what I'm saying.
18 months ago.
Let me be clear.
And that the motivations of anti-Semitic attacks, when you really look back on the history of it, are many. And there are some on the left and some on the right. So that is the point that Bill's making, right? That is the point
I'm talking explicitly about college campus protests. You can trace it to about 18 months ago, the increase. That's what I'm saying. And Democrats had every opportunity to address this. They did not.
And Shimon joins us now from Boulder. What were you learning about the Holocaust survivor who was injured?
Well, sadly, her daughter was with her yesterday, and she was seriously injured. Her daughter has some serious burns. The Holocaust survivor also suffered some injuries, some burns to her feet, and so she's been really worried about her daughter. I last exchanged texts with her last night, and she said she was exhausted and in a state of shock, and she was just hoping that she could just take care of her daughter. Everyone who I've talked to who knows her says, like, the strength that this woman has and what she means to this community, they just can't explain. And they say they're just so happy that she's okay, and they're looking forward to seeing her and really hearing from her and to get her take on everything that happened. And so far, she hasn't wanted to talk about it. As you can imagine, Anderson, everyone wants to speak to her. But for now, she's just really worried about her daughter and trying to take care of her, Anderson.
Well, we wish her the best. Shimon, thank you very much. Joining us now, CNN Chief of Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst John Miller. What stands out to you about, first of all, this attack?
A couple of really interesting things. One, we're observing a shift in offender characteristics. You know this better than I do, but if you look at your school shooters, your lone wolf terrorist attacks, what you usually see is someone who is in a stage of serial failing, socially, educationally, employment, no social network. They go into the propaganda, they drink the Kool-Aid, and they are convinced that doing this terrible thing will make them stand out and to some be a hero. In the Jewish Museum case, you know, we have an employed individual who actually went to work that day, ran a conference for his company, and did that after. He lives in Chicago with his girlfriend. He was substantial, if not wildly successful. In this case, you've got an individual who has a wife, 5 children, lives in a house in a suburban area. The neighbors brought cupcakes when he moved in. He waited to do this attack until his daughter had graduated from college. So we're seeing people who are doing 2 very different things. One, they're willing to walk away from a lot. And 2, and this is striking, they're not fleeing the scene, trying to get away, trying to mask their identity. They're not taking on police or trying to get police to kill them. They're waiting, trying to own this attack.
The Boulder officials said that the suspect was not on their radar, and though he had these immigration issues.
Nor was the Jewish Museum suspect. And nor was the individual who attacked the Pennsylvania governor with Molotov cocktail in the governor's mansion while he slept, except for minor drug arrests. So we're seeing that too. Although it is typical in terrorism cases that they're not on the radar for criminal behavior, but sometimes you run into them in the chat rooms and other places. these people haven't really turned up.
I mean, I remember back after Oklahoma City, people buying large amounts of agricultural fertilizer would suddenly pop up on law enforcement radar. Something like this, small amounts of gasoline, I assume that's what the accelerant was. I mean, people go to gas stations all the time with a can.
Well, that's right. And also look at where we are. We're not in New York City or Chicago. This is in the 100-mile drive between Colorado Springs and Boulder, which is a land of people who use lawn mowers, riding mowers, all kinds of leaf blowers, things that use gasoline in small amounts, where he stopped at 3 different gas stations along the way to fill up these materials.
Apparently not to attract attention at any one, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. John Miller, thanks very much. Appreciate it. Shortly before air, I spoke to eyewitness Omer Shakhar, co-leader of the Run for Their Lives March, and Miri Kornfeld, a director with Stand With Us Colorado, a pro-Israel group that works with march organizers. Omer, can you walk us through what happened yesterday, what you remember?
We were walking on Pearl Street, a busy street here in Boulder, to share the voice. We're not chanting, we're not screaming, we're not engaging. We were doing our regular route, and we go to the courthouse where we gather, take some pictures, and read the names of the hostages. This is where the terrorist has been waiting for us. When we gathered, he threw Molotov cocktail under the legs of my friends, and they lit them in fire.
Did he say anything initially?
No, he wanted to keep it a surprise. He didn't say anything. The first thing was throwing the Molotov cocktail at us, and after that, he was chanting and screaming.
What can you tell me about your friends who were attacked? I know one of them is 88 years old. She has very serious burns.
Correct. In our group, there are kids and there are people and elderly. This woman, unfortunately, the bottle hit her and she fell into the fire, and this is why she's severely burned. We wish her quick recovery. We're sending her all the prayers. There are a few more others that were rushed to the hospital. One of them is a Holocaust survivor. She's so determined. I just heard from her. She's doing better. She's been released, but she's determined to keep walking. She said, "Yeah, see you on Sunday." Those are the people that we are walking together.
Obviously, we just heard he's going to be charged with a hate crime. I know Jewish leaders have called for swift action in the aftermath of this attack. Miri, what would you like to see happen, either the local, the state, the federal level?
Absolutely. I think it's really important that everybody in the world remember that when we're marching and Run for Their Lives, we're marching for the hostages that were taken on October 7th, the over 240 people who were kidnapped from their homes by Hamas militants. Hamas, the internationally recognized terrorist organization, and they massacred 1,200 people in Israel. That terrorism and that massacre, in addition to the follow-up hate crimes and anti-Semitic acts that have happened all over the world, not only in North America, need to be condemned at the highest levels by all elected officials and by everybody who has a heart. Anti-Semitism left unchecked turns into this, and this is what happens when people call to globalize the Intifada. This is what it looks like.
Omer, is there anything else you want people to know?
My concern that this event, one or similar events, won't be just against Jewish people. We as a society need to condemn any act of violence, because now it was with Jewish people and one person that didn't like to hear what those people had to say, but it can be against any other community. And I think this is the message that we need to take from this incident.
Well, Omer, Miri, thank you so much for talking with us. And again, I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Anderson. We appreciate you.
It was John Miller, and I talked about a moment ago, this attack is only one of several recent incidents and a growing longer-term problem. According to the Anti-Defamation League, there were a record 9,354 acts of anti-Semitic harassment, vandalism, and violence in 2024. Joining us now, ADL CEO and National Director Jonathan Greenblatt, also former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Jonathan, we mentioned this rise in incidents. Was the potential for something like this on your radar?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Anderson. The Jewish community hasn't really had a moment to breathe since October the 7th. Day after day, it's incident after incident, assaults, vandalisms, demonstrations, harassment, the list goes on. So in many ways, I think this was predictable. We're seeing Zionists demonized. We're seeing Israelis, dehumanized. And we've seen anti-Semitism really normalized in the public conversation.
I mean, this is a march that's been happening regularly without incident in Boulder, Colorado. I mean,
even calling it a march is generous. I mean, these are elderly people,
walking.
Walking around a park, and that this man planned it for a year, and that he was so meticulous in his planning. And as the FBI reported today, not only did he say free Palestine yesterday, not only did he say, I want to end all Zionists, he looked up where was a Zionist group, and he said, I want to kill as many Zionist people as possible. This isn't normal.
And according to police, he said he would do it again.
Absolutely.
Andrew, I mean, should this attack on Boulder have been on law enforcement's radar somehow? Would his immigration status have been enough to raise a red flag?
Not really. Not really. I mean, realistically, every person who overstays a tourist visa doesn't come on the radar of either local law enforcement or federal law enforcement. It's not traditionally been the sort of thing that certainly the FBI or their other law enforcement partners have been focused on if that person has not done something else. They haven't been involved in criminal activity or come up in intelligence reporting as someone who might be extreme. But I think really important thing here, Anderson, is to point out that number that you quoted, that 9,000 plus number of anti-Semitic acts in 2024 is about 5% higher than the number that we experienced in 2023. So that's in any 2 years, that's a pretty big jump. But if you go back to 2019, the number from 24 is over 300% higher than the number from 2019. So you can't really even get your mind around how significant October 7th is as a point of radicalization for people like this person and others who would be inclined to follow their extremist beliefs and take action by inflicting violence upon the Jewish community. We are off the charts in terms of threats to this community. And, we really need to be doing everything possible to limit that.
The man accused of using a makeshift flamethrower and Molotov cocktails to set people on fire during a peaceful march in support of Israeli hostages, just making his first court appearance. It was quick and he did not speak. But according to investigators, we are learning that Mohammed Sabri Soliman said he had been planning the attack for over a year and that he had with him another 16 Molotov cocktails that were not even used.
He said that he had previously tried to purchase a firearm, but resorted to the Molotov cocktails when he could not purchase a gun because he was not a legal citizen.
Terrifying to think about this. The only reason he couldn't purchase that gun was because he wasn't a legal citizen. To think how much worse this tragedy could have been. Soliman now is charged with 16 counts of attempted murder, also charged with a federal hate crime. This video was taken during the attack, and it shows one woman severely injured. You can see we have blurred her, obviously suffering from injuries there. Bystanders are trying to douse her with water to put out the burns. The camera then pans towards the suspect, who at that time was still walking around. According to witnesses talking to CNN, the suspect was yelling "Free Palestine" during the attack. 12 people were injured with burns and other injuries. And this latest act of anti-Semitic violence comes just 2 weeks after 2 Israeli embassy staff members were shot dead in Washington. Their attacker also accused of yelling "Free Palestine." And 49 days after Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence was set on fire, according to the warrant, a suspect told 911 operators he targeted the governor in part because of what he believed were Shapiro's views on the war in Gaza. Whitney Weil begins our coverage tonight live from Boulder, Colorado. And Whitney, obviously a ton of new information here just in these past, really over this past hour coming in about the attack and the planning in this arrest warrant that you have gotten your hands on. What more can you tell us?
what is so remarkable about this arrest warrant, Aaron, is that according to law enforcement, he expressed no remorse for his actions. The arrest warrant makes very clear that he told law enforcement he would do it again, and he described why he did it, how he did it. And further, Aaron, there was a little bit more detail about what he was thinking as this crime was unfolding. So as you had mentioned, there were multiple Molotov cocktails that he did not detonate, and he said that as he through the first two, he got scared because he'd never hurt anyone before. But even still, he told law enforcement he would do it again. It's simply remarkable. Law enforcement really praised the response from other law enforcement, the long list of police officers and federal agents who responded immediately, but also, Aaron, the community who rushed in to help their neighbors when they were injured.
There was a male with a blowtorch setting people on fire. I know that there was at least one party rolling around in flames.
Armed with Molotov cocktails and a makeshift flamethrower, authorities say 45-year-old Mohammed Sabri Solomon burned at least 12 people at a weekly Jewish gathering in downtown Boulder as they peacefully marched, calling for the release of Israeli hostages in Gaza.
Medical for multiple burns on the courthouse lot.
According to law enforcement, Solomon sprayed gasoline while holding a lighter in the direction of the marchers Sunday afternoon while yelling, "Free Palestine." The FBI is investigating the case as an act of terrorism.
The person who threw the Molotov cocktail had two more in his hand. And he was holding them and he was yelling and he was screaming at everybody. I think he was saying, "You're killing my people."
An elderly Holocaust survivor was among the victims.
He's making Molotov cocktails.
Law enforcement says 2 Molotov cocktails were thrown and 16 more were found at the scene.
Mr. Solomon stated that he had been planning this attack for a year. And he acted because he hated what he called the Zionist group.
During the attack, Solomon took off his vest and shirt as they caught fire, according to witnesses. According to an affidavit, he told the FBI he wanted to kill all Zionist people and wished they were all dead, stating he would do it again. Solomon is in the country illegally, according to Homeland Security. He is an Egyptian national and had lived in Kuwait and applied for asylum but was denied a visa. DHS said he entered the country in August 2022 as a non-immigrant visitor and was granted a 2-year work authorization in March 2023 that has since expired. Solomon appeared in court today.
This is the matter concerning Mohammed Suleiman.
Solomon is facing 16 counts of first-degree attempted murder, as well as multiple counts of assault and felony use of incendiary devices, among other state and federal charges. Recent anti-Semitic incidents have become increasingly violent. Sunday's attack coming after 2 Israeli staff members were shot and killed in Washington, D.C., outside an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum nearly 2 weeks ago.
Free Palestine!
And nearly 2 months after a man set fire to the Pennsylvania governor's mansion using Molotov cocktails.
Aaron, according to that arrest affidavit, he told law enforcement that he expected to die in this exchange. Law enforcement has listed off the long list of charges here. There are more than 40 state charges. DOJ is handling the hate crime charge. The DOJ hate crime charge with an attempted murder underneath it, according to the Department of Justice, the U.S. attorney here in Denver, that carries with it, if convicted, a maximum of life behind bars, very similar to the state charges. The state charges in total, Aaron, carry a maximum of more than 400 years behind bars. Aaron.
All right, Whitney, thank you very much in Boulder tonight. Out front now, Boulder Police Chief Stephen Redfern. And Chief Redfern, I really appreciate your time tonight. We're learning a lot more now about the planning that went into this attack. I mean, what are you able to share about the planning and how much worse, frankly, this incident was intended to be?
Yeah, so we know now that this suspect planned this terror attack for over a year. And of concern, as you might have heard in the press conference, he attempted to purchase a firearm. I am so grateful that that didn't happen. I can't imagine how much worse this would be if he was able to do that. And so it's very clear he was intent on harming people. And I'm just glad that we were able to get there relatively quickly and contain this before it was worse.
Yeah, I mean, you can only imagine how horrific it could have been, and it so horrible as it is, but to imagine some sort of a firearm and how much death and carnage that could have caused. The affidavit so far says that he told police, and I quote, he wanted to kill all Zionist people and wished they were all dead. Have his conversations with police given you more information about his motive?
There's been extensive conversation. Interestingly enough, the suspect was cooperative, and detectives interviewed him yesterday afternoon. And I think to your quote that you just gave from the affidavit, I mean, that is clearly the motive. We have no other motive that's come out at this point. I don't want to say that there might not be something else that comes out down the road, but right now, it became apparent in the first few hours that was the motive.
So the affidavit also says that his wife gave police an iPhone that had belonged to her husband, and it also says that he told police that he left an iPhone at his house, and that on there were messages to his family, as well as a journal that he left. Can you share with anything with us about what he wrote in that journal or what he says in any of these communications?
I can't, and only because our partners with the FBI handled the entire scene down in Colorado Springs where his residence was, so I haven't seen that. I have not talked to the FBI about that. They processed that entire scene, and those things are in their possession.
So you say he lived in Colorado Springs, and obviously it's about 2 hours away from Boulder. And we understand that the sheriff's department there says that they'd received 3 non-criminal calls, that's how they describe them, to his house over the past couple of years, or since 2022. Is there anything more you can tell us about those calls, and to the point that he had, as you said, wanted to purchase a firearm and couldn't? Was he on anyone's radar before the attack?
So I'm not familiar with the calls for service. El Paso County Sheriff would have to provide those. I haven't seen those either. We did not have on our radar here before the attack. And I know in talking with our partners with the FBI, a question was asked at the press conference. They also, including the Joint Terrorism Task Force, did not have this suspect on their radar. So as far as I know, there was nothing that pre-indicated that the suspect was coming to Boulder to do this attack, which obviously makes this all the more scary.
Right. Well, especially when you're talking about it, that he planned it for over a year, right? That wouldn't have actually risen to anybody's radar from what you understand right now. In your press conference right after the attack, I know you said that you're not calling it a terror attack at this point. Those were your words, Chief. Now that you know more about the motive, right? You've got more information. Are you comfortable calling this a terror attack?
Absolutely. And I just want to say to that, we did that press briefing very early on. There were so many moving parts. I was not comfortable in that initial briefing, even though we had a really good idea that it was going to be called terrorism. It was a targeted terrorist attack. We were being very careful at that point because at that point we were still interviewing the suspect, interviewing multiple victims and witnesses, and we did not want to put out something that was inaccurate. We were being very cautious at that, and obviously that changed. The later press conference in the evening, we were very clear that we believe this was indeed terrorism, and I still stand with that.
All right. Well, Chief Redfern, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.